So let's try to break down, what you mean by the term actuary.
अच्छा ठीक है पॉलिसी बेचेगा that's the first response.
Actuarial science is any type of risk analysis can be done. Any type.
Sky is not the limit but we are the limit.
Actually कर लोगे तो 1 करोड़ का पैकेज मिलेगा.
Entered into a startup company. The company got shut in 6 months. Nevertheless, then again I started.
Actuaries are like the Parsi community of our country, right? It's a very closely knit community. Not many people know about them. You can't find them, but internally each of them know each other and they are helping each other out. Is it possible to move abroad only basis 13 papers, or do you also need to pursue some masters?
Modi ji also called it Amrit Kal, so I really want to be in this phase of India, right?
You have to be very consistent. That is the only very basic requirement.
It's an evolving field. Keep upskilling yourself.
काफी लोगों को ऐसा लगता है कि इसमें तो इतना क्या ही काम कर लेंगे ये लोग.
That's the reason we are doing this, right?
Hopefully this should help. So the reason we are all here is to kind of understand what actuary is as a career. बहुत सारे students को लगता है that actuary कर लोगे तो 1 करोड़ का पैकेज मिलेगा, right? So we kind of need to break that down, that what exactly an actuary does, what are the kind of skill sets that you need in order to succeed in this particular career, and what is the typical roadmap. Before we jump into that, let's start with a quick round of introductions. Ayush, if you can just quickly give us an introduction about, let's start with your academic background. Where you grew up, 10th में कितना percent आया, 11th, 12th में what were your stream, 12th में result क्या है, and how your actuary journey started and where you're working currently, and then rest can follow.
Okay, correct. So I belong from Jodhpur. It's a town in Rajasthan, and primarily till 10th I was there only, and then I focused on commerce, maths, these subjects. My dad is a CA. He really wanted me to become a CA, but I didn't very much like accounts and theory subjects, and I really liked maths. So someone told me that if you like maths, maybe you can go for actuarial science and subjects like these. Eventually after my 11th and 12th I got around 95% in my 12th standard, and then I got into NM, moved my entire city. I think that was much more challenging than I thought. Started with my actuarial classes and everything, and I remember my dad coming to me with a lot of coaching classes, because coming from Jodhpur, it was not easy to convince him, because let's say till now in Jodhpur only, let's say 5 or 7 people are doing actuarial science who I know of, as compared to go back to NM. If there is a 10-seater table in a library, there will be 2 people sitting studying and solving revision notes for actuarial science. Later I kind of continued doing my papers. I took coaching from Finstat, it's a coaching in Andheri, and then later started my career with an insurance company in the life insurance domain. I worked in individual pricing for around 2 years at Future Generali, and then moved to Milliman. The reason to moving to Milliman was to, let's say, get a flavor of multiple types of work at once, because in consultancy you like to do that. And then currently I'm working with a insurtech startup, which is a blend of a product manager come actuarial analyst role, where I can not only apply my actuarial skills but also kind of learn about getting clients, marketing, and creating something from the scratch. So yeah.
Good. So how easy was it to convince your dad, who's already a CA, and at that time I think commerce में CA के ऊपर कोई degree नहीं था, right? So how easy was it to convince your dad to let you take actuary as a career as a 18-year-old boy?
So I think the right question is how difficult was it. I still feel that he was from the industry, he worked in CA for a while, then did his business, and all the connections, let's say, we had also, whoever he asked to, either people didn't know about actuarial science, or there was this myth that India में सिर्फ there are 300-400 actuaries and it's very difficult, this, that, and एक paper भी नहीं होगा and all of that. So it was very much difficult. So as a result, I didn't tell what I did in NM. I did my Bachelor of Accounts and Finance. I really wanted to do statistics or something like that as my degree, but that was a closure which we came to. Okay, let's do accounts and finance. I'll try my actual papers for 2 years. If nothing works out, if all the myths are true, I'll fall back to CA or do any other course. Otherwise, but then after, like, once the journey started and everything, and because I liked the subject, so he saw me happy and everything, so things are back.
Is he happy now?
Yeah, he's pretty much convinced. Yeah.
Darshan, how about you?
I belong to Mumbai. I was born and brought up in Mumbai itself. Post 10th, I pursued my education in science. So I belong to the science stream. I did it from Ruya College, which is in Matunga.
And what was your percent in 10th, sorry?
95% approx. And in 12th, post science, I got approximately 96. So I decided that I came to know about actuarial science right around 9th or start of 10th. I was sure that I wanted to do it, but I am a person who keeps changing my mind easily. So I was like, let's do science, because from science I can shift in any stream post 12, either in commerce or arts. But if I pursue commerce, I can't move to a profession in science. So I took science, and while I was in 11th, 12th, I came to know about an institute called IQS, which is Institute of Actuarial and Quantitative Studies. They did seminars. There were people approaching students in different colleges. So IQS approached Ruya College, and there was a seminar that was conducted. From there, I came to know that, okay, apart from the traditional approaches like IFOA and IA, there's also something called as IQS, which offers a degree, bachelor's degree in actuarial science. So after a lot of discussions with people, considering whether I should pursue it from IQS or IFOA, I thought that it would be best doing it from IQS. So I pursued, after my science, I pursued my BSc in Actuarial Science and Quantitative Finance from IQS. Again, if the name is BSc, it's not necessarily for the science stream. Anybody from commerce, arts or science background can pursue this degree. So I completed my 3 years of bachelor's at IAQS. So IAQS offers exemptions of up to 6 papers from IFOA. So IFOA and IAQS are mutually recognized. They offer exemptions of up to 6 papers. So I got my 6 papers exemptions from IAQS, and during the course of 3 years, you are taught certain curriculum of certain subjects from IFOA which do not belong to this 6 group of papers. So I appeared for additional 3 papers during my 3 years of course. Right now I work at Deloitte post my bachelor's. So during bachelor's, there's something called as an internship program at IQS at the end of second year. So it's like a mandatory internship program. It's marked in your 3rd year of course degree. So IQS helps you find internships, places you can apply from external sources as well. So I started as an intern at Deloitte in the risk advisory field as a consultant. So I started my internship there. I completed my internship till I graduated. Post that, I was offered a full-time role at Deloitte itself. So I am currently at Deloitte in the risk advisory field for approximately 2.5 years. And as of now, if I talk about my actuarial academic qualification, I'm done with 10 papers. I'm awaiting results for 2. If
Great.
that goes positive, then 1 more paper left.
Super. So when you were studying your science for 11th, 12th, was actually your backup plan, or you always wanted to pursue, like, didn't you have something like an engineering or a medicine, because people usually take science for that?
So when I started science, I knew I don't want to do engineering or medical. That was sure. But just because, so let's put it that way, that actuary was my first aim. Engineering and medical was my backup.
Okay.
In case I change my mind, I can pursue engineering and medical, but I was determined that I want to do actuarial science. Science was again the reason, so that I can shift to any stream if I needed be.
Right. And did the maths of science stream help you in your actuary somewhere?
Yes.
Mainly stats.
Yeah.
Stats.
Maths, so integration, derivation, all these in the initial papers you require for CS or CM papers.
Correct.
So there it helped quite a few, but then you learn the curriculum at IQS as well. So
Super. And how about you, Aayushi?
So in 12th, I got 85%.
Okay.
10th was a good score, but then I wanted commerce only, that was fixed. I started with commerce. I was keen for doing CA because that was the toughest degree, as you mentioned, in commerce background.
Right.
So I started with CA. While I was doing CA, I was always interested. Me and my brother both were very interested in maths. So we were always very keen to understand that what is actuarial science. Let's just explore what syllabus it has and all. So we both gave ACET. He then didn't continue. I continued after completing CA. So first I completed my CA. I had my CA final exams and all. So I had a break between my ACET and my other papers journey.
Okay.
Once I was done with my CA, then I didn't want to do any other degrees but something. Now that but something had a very good option of actuarial science, but it was a very long way.
Correct.
So I thought, but as such, it's a second degree, so it should help as far as I can go. And with every paper, we also understand that there is some value. It is nothing that halfway also it will not value or add on to my qualification. So I started with the actuarial papers after being a qualified CA. I started my journey of experience wherein from initial stage I wanted to get into some actuarial experience, but nevertheless it was not very easy at that time because I was a qualified CA, so internship would not suit me, and job wise it was difficult because my papers were not that much. So I had to complete initial few papers first. By then I just entered into a startup company, and there it was a risk analytics role. The company got shut in 6 months. Nevertheless, then again I started for finding some actuarial role, and then I had a very unique role. I started in ICICI Lombard, but in the internal audit team, because I was a CA and having some actuarial background.
Okay.
So they wanted someone who can review the actuarial aspects, which ideally they were not able to do earlier, just with the background of finance team.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started there. I was there for 2 years. So I got a very broad idea about the entire general insurance industry and product, because ICICI Lombard is the
Pioneer.
correct. It's the largest company. So there I got the entire background. And after that, for moving into the actuarial experience, I shifted from there. So internal transfer was my first initial plan, but that time it did not work out. So I went outside. I had a 1.5 year experience in Magma HDI, and again I am now back to ICICI Lombard actuarial team.
Wow.
Since last 1 year.
So actuary and CA both are mentally exhausting careers. So the only thing that I could think about is that what actually prompted you that, after finishing such a heavy degree like CA, you again wanted to jump into something so exhausting and so, I would say, something that takes so much time and efforts. So what really motivated you?
So, as I said, that I didn't want to do any other degrees. I was sure about it. I didn't want to do CS, which is a complete
but weren't
theory.
you satisfied with the CA salaries? Like any reason that you wanted to kind of...
that it is like CA is not sufficient. So CA never teaches you a particular curriculum. It teaches you to manage any challenge that comes to you.
Right.
Okay. The second thing was that ideally that time it was a phase where if you have something add on over it, then you are not in compulsion to just move into the CA perspective works. Yeah. So I was keen on that, and plus maths and the growth perspective which we saw in actuarial science.
Right.
At that time, at the current stage, and which we see in future. So that was like I'm very ambitious, and so is my family very supportive.
Super.
So they also pushed me that if you want to and can do, it's your wish. And as such ये ऐसा है ना कि कहीं भी जाके रुके तो भी कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. 2 reasons. I'm like it's not कि क्योंकि मेरे पास CA की डिग्री है. There are many people today also in the industry who are yet with just 1-2 papers maybe, but the ones who qualify have a different value. That is a complete fact. But the ones who are still in the journey also are no less.
They are not like devalued also.
Exactly. So it was a journey which was a call that can be taken up. And yeah, so no CS, no CFA, that was completely sure, and a very keen interest in maths. So it's not only about maths, yeah, that is also we all have understood. Yeah, we all have understood in this journey. It's not maths. It's very beautiful curriculum for actuarial science. You name it and it will be in the syllabus. You talk of eco, you talk of stats, you talk of maths, you talk of finance, you talk of risk, you talk of modeling, like anything and everything. So in CA, what we were taught was to accept or face any challenge. But what I have understood from the curriculum of actuarial science is that any type of risk analysis can be done, any type. Now that is not specific to life, general, banking, finance, any type. Today you want to start a new company, like a startup I'm talking, what will be the challenges, but you will be able to, like, because of the curriculum and the experience which you are exposed to, you will be able to analyze things more better.
Makes sense. So let's try to break down, what you mean by the term actuary, right?
Okay.
When I spoke to a few students during our career counseling session, they thought that actually मतलब वो insurance में जो काम करते हैं, that's it, right? And they don't want to work in the insurance industry. And we had to spend a lot of efforts, trying to tell them what an actuary does. But I want to hear from each one of you, what is your understanding of an actuary and what is it that the industry means when they compute the term actuary? Anyone?
Okay, so first of all, like the term actuarial science, a lot of times when I've said to people, they're like, but tune to commerce li thi na, right? It's not like that, right? Even a commerce background or even let's say from a humanities background, if they have, because we don't need much maths, it's a perfect blend of business acumen also and maths, as Aayushi said. Now, I'll just break it down. Like I think actuarial science in its very simplicity is the study of risk and uncertainty, right? And this can be applied to anywhere, a business, a family business, a startup, an insurance company, anywhere. I'll just give an example, given the audience. I don't want to go into premiums, life insurance and all of that. Let's say it's my birthday. I'm a 10-year-old kid. It's my birthday. I want to invite 20 of my friends. This is the event which we are talking about. Now the potential risks are me inviting them, but a lot of people not turning up. The cake getting destroyed on the way. Right, or let's say my mom not giving me a certain permission of doing something on my birthday, right? All these things are potential risks which I as an actuary can predict, which can go wrong. Then maybe I'll assign the probability and likelihood to each and every event that can happen, and I'll assign a backup plan. अगर ये हो गया तो मैं ये करूँगा, अगर ये हो गया तो ये करूँगा. Now the similar thing from an insurance context, the company also does. For example, if I am selling a lot of policies, I might not have sufficient funds to, let's say, give back to my policy holders. I might not have a good investment return on my premiums to get into it. So it's all in all the science of risk and uncertainty, and it can be applied anywhere. And actuary is someone who uses these skills, because I think actuarial science kind of gives you a kind of a suite of so many tools and weapons which you can use all through your journey and all through your life, right? So it is kind of a suit which will help you anywhere, and it is a person who applies that business acumen also, and you can take better and informed responsibilities and roles.
So yeah, that's good. Anything else, guys? Anything that you want to add to that definition?
So mainly, as we discussed, that it's only about risk analysis and the management of the risk, the best way you can do that. So that is why risk analysis in any field.
Okay, so the underlying principle is to compute risk and see the likelihood of any particular event, right? Why is it that actuaries are only associated with insurance as an industry?
That in itself is a myth.
Okay, right. But every time I see like I told you, a lot of students, they say that they don't want to work in the insurance sector, and that's one of the main reasons why they don't end up taking actuary. So how do we kind of demystify this for them?
I think even now, a couple of students who are starting to pursue actuarial science, whenever they say in their families or their relatives that, okay, I'm going to pursue actuarial science, so their first response is, "Acha, take a policy bechega." That's the first response that I think a lot of students are getting. But so traditionally, I think the concept of actuarial science started in the insurance industry. Actuarial science, I think as of now as well, a lot of concentration will be in the insurance industry. But given, as Aayushi said, that the curriculum is vast, it just not accommodates maths, stats, but it also includes eco, accounting, etc. So I think recently actuaries are also started to going in consultancy. Right now climate change is on its top, so a lot of actuaries are entering into climate change as well. Both the institutes are in their initiatives to give out seminars, events on climate change. There are climate change groups. Big data is also something that is booming right now. So there are a couple of actuaries that I know who are in the data science field, working as data scientists, data analysts. So though actuaries started traditionally in insurance, but I think as Aayush also mentioned, that actuaries can be anywhere because of the skills that they have, because future financial uncertainty is present in any domain that you can enter into. So hence actuaries through different roles can assist in a lot of professions in addition to insurance as well.
So can you give one example of what an actuary will be doing in the field of climate change?
Okay, so climate change, if I talk per se specific to banks, let's say as an example, climate change is affecting the operations of the bank as to how they are lending because their lending portfolio gets different. So let's say as an example, a bank is giving a loan to a manufacturing company, jiska revenue is linked to, let's say, the growth of crops.
Okay.
There's climate change, your harvest of crops will get affected. Hence, the revenue of that company is going to get affected.
Okay.
Hence, there will be a difference in its repaying capacity to the bank. So, an actuary has to analyze as to, okay, the climate change has affected the harvest of crops this way. This is the relation of the revenue to the harvest of crops of the company, and hence this is going to be the uncertainty in the in the borrower repaying the loan to the bank. So the bank will have to keep this much money aside in order to cover this risk. So that is where we can enter it.
And accordingly, the debt terms and the tenor will also
That can be revised.
Perfect. Super. Makes sense.
Adding to what Darshan said, I think let's not maybe divide actually into finance, risk, or insurance or anything. Risk of anything getting wrong, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that in insurance, let's say if an individual dies, the wrong thing happened, and the insurance company promises to pay me a sum of money, okay? But there are many things which can get wrong, but they are not insurable. But still, from actuarial science, we can assess them. Let's say as a finance and risk consultant, I can assess the likelihood, let's say, of a stock price going below the certain level, and I can also calculate its effect. So I think some risks are insurable, some are non-insurable, but actuaries can predict anything what can potentially go wrong. When I say predict, of course, with a certain probability and likelihood, there is no certainty. So there are actuaries also working in, let's say, predicting who will win the T20 World Cup this year. So yeah.
Talking about insurance, I've seen some of the most bizarre things that have been insured.
Yes.
Like people have insured their voices, their body parts.
Yeah.
I think 2 years back, entire Ganesh ka, that GSB Mandal was also
Yes.
insured. So I think actuaries also play a role in these kind of insurers other than the traditional ones.
Covering the risk.
Is what they do the best.
Yeah, like when COVID happened, the pandemic, so Wimbledon, like the tennis institute, they also kind of had insured themselves for if the pandemic happens, because people will not come for matches and all of that, there will be a lot of effect on the revenue. They got a very huge sum from an insurance company just because COVID hit, right? So,
Like event insurance.
Yes.
Sort of
Got
that.
it. Makes sense. Perfect. So let's try to break down the roadmap for a 15 or a 16-year-old boy or girl who wants to pursue this particular field, right? So which stream is the best stream to pursue actual science? Is it science, commerce, or humanities? Because in India, these are the traditional streams that we offer. What is your recommendation?
Any?
Yeah, I think there's no.
As per their interest, their initial interest should drive them for the initial curriculum which they want to take, commerce, science, or humanities maybe. But after that, if they are trying to pursue, so I think in IFOA we can start right from 11th itself, like after
Okay, so
completion of 10th.
IFOA is the institute that
UK
belongs to
institute.
The full form is
Institute and Faculty of Actuaries.
Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. So there are, I think, 2 institutes for actuaries, right?
No, we have many,
Okay.
but these are the 2 main recognized one. Yeah.
Okay. So there is one UK institute that is called IFOA, and then there's one Indian institute which is II,
Yes.
which is Institute of Actuaries of India.
Yes.
Right. So a student can enroll in either of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if after 10th, then he can enroll only in IFOA.
Okay.
Wherein he can just start directly with the papers. But if he wants to get registered with IAI, then he will have to wait up till the completion of the 12th portion, like 12th exams. After which he can give the entrance exam. And I think entrance exam is also now.
No, it's after 12th. There's an entrance of ACET.
Okay.
ACET, ACET,
Yes.
which is the Actuarial Common Entrance Test.
Yeah. If you clear that, then you can just start with the papers in Indian Institute also.
Okay. But tell me something, do students actually give actuary papers after 10th? Like, do they have that mental maturity or academic maturity to learn maybe, let's say integration or derivatives, or is it advisable to start only after 12th, irrespective of the institute?
No, so they really do it after 10th. In
Yeah.
fact, when I was in my second year, I gave my first actual science paper, and in the class I had people of 11th and 12th graders. I had a feeling, maybe I am behind in everything, but no, they really kind of give papers, and the initial papers are very calculation heavy and very
Quant-based.
formula centric, quant based. So, and as I think for someone who comes from a maths background, it really helps. But one thing which I think your question, which stream, I really appreciate that there can be any field, but if let's say a 15-year old individual know that he or she wants to do actuarial science, I think having maths in their portfolio will help.
Yeah.
Even if it's humanities, maths will help because let's say if I have not studied maths after my 8th, 9th, the elementary maths ke baad, then it can get really difficult to take all the concept of the initial papers of actuarial science. But aisa bhi nahi that I need to be mathematics honors type and I need to be too good in maths. It's not like that also. A decent level of maths, 11th, 12th, even if you have just studied the concept, it should be enough, because after a few papers we focus on business acumen and understanding the knowledge instead of the maths. So yeah.
Good. So 11th, 12th, we are agnostic with the stream, but maths is one of the preferred subjects that you should have. Which institute should one go for? Should they go for the UK institute? Should they go for the Indian institute? Are there any real pros and cons of either of the institutes?
So I think IFOA is more globally recognized than II, and that's I think one of the major reasons that a lot of current student actuaries are from IFOA. Nonetheless, IAI and IFOA has an agreement for exemptions from IAI side. So what this basically means is that even the papers that you clear from IFOA, you are exempted for those papers from IAI as well. Obviously, you'll have to be a member of IAI for that to happen. But the papers that you clear from IFOA are automatically been exempted from IAI, but it's not vice versa. So I think that's one of the reasons that students can pursue IFOA, and if they have an interest in getting the qualification from IAI as well, they can do so from this exemption agreement. And even if not that, so there is still a mutual recognition at the fellowship level. So what do I mean by that is, if you clear all 13 papers from either IFOA or II, you become a fellow of that particular institute. That's a qualified actuary. So you can get the qualification from the second institute as well. So let's say if you do it from IFOA, you can complete the formalities at II and become a fellow of II as well.
Again, so are there any kind of differentiation in terms of the difficulty of papers or the costs with respect to both the institutes?
Yes, there is cost difference, and I think students very smartly use their actuarial science skills to hedge their risk of failing also, right? कि अगर IFOA से नहीं हुआ तो 2 महीने बाद IIS से देना है. So I know a lot of people. In fact, I also at one point of time used to give papers from both institutes, right? And I don't think I recommend that, because I think sticking to one institute is good. Some basic levels, I think, which are the real differences, the cost is a very big factor. So let's say a random paper or initial paper, let's say at II can cost around 7,000-8,000. The same paper at IFOA can cost around 35,000-40,000, like given if you are not on the reduced rate, or 20,000
reduced rate,
given the level of papers. So 3 to 4 times is the price difference, which is very nice. I agree with the fact that it's globally recognized, but as an individual, if you are kind of certain as to where you want to settle, let's say if you want to settle in India, then going with II is really okay as well. And I think there is no one good or bad institute, but from an individual standpoint, what works for an individual is very much significant. Let's say I am not sure where I want to settle. If I want to go to, let's say, the UK or US to work, then I think having a IFOA fellowship or IFOA degree will be much useful, and doing it from there might make sense.
And are papers easy or difficult, or they are like depends attempt to attempt?
No, it would actually rather depend on few initial papers being easy from one institute.
So it's like a trade-off. Like some papers are easy over here, some papers are
Depends on which paper you are appearing for.
The only thing is that the passing percentage of IAI is 50 percentile, and for IFOA it is around 60 percentile.
The passing mark,
Yeah. So, but then again, the level of difficulty of paper also takes care about managing
the percentage. Perfect.
And I think even now we are in the post-COVID world and everything, because pre-COVID I don't think we need to discuss also. All of us, I think not Darshan, but maybe me and Aayushi used to go to the center, let's say in Kamla Mills or somewhere. The exam used to be conducted by a British council, and we had to use the cookies and tea in the break and everything. Sab kuch अच्छे से होता था, like proper pen paper exam. But now I think that time has gone, and I don't think it will come anytime sooner. So it also depends on how that exam is being conducted. From an IFOA standpoint, the exam is entirely open book.
Okay.
Right? You can literally open your books and give the exam.
The reference is allowed by the institute.
Correct.
But
because I'm assuming it's all practical case study based, right?
Exactly. The entire paper structure has changed after this era.
Yes, the COVID era and everything. But I really want my audience not to be very happy. You know, open बहुत easy होगा.
Because you don't know the answer.
You don't know the answer. The questions are that nuanced and that kind of एप्लीकेशन बेस्ड दैट सब कुछ सामने से होने के बाद भी लगेगा कि क्या लिखना है, राइट?
एक तो देख नहीं पाओगे, टाइम नहीं रहेगा। ऐसा भी नहीं है कि हाँ चलो ढूंढ के निकाल लेंगे आंसर, ऐसा भी नहीं है। एंड प्लस द डिफिकल्टी लेवल हैज चेंज्ड नाउ completely. Difficulty in the sense that type of questions have completely changed. Earlier when it was a one एग्जामिनेशन हॉल पेपर, तभी कुछ ऐसा इजी पूछ भी लेते थे, ऐसा एकदम बुक वर्क जैसा, जो अब नहीं हो सकता.
Yeah, as compared to II, so II is like again from home, but it's not open based, right? They kind of switch on a webcam and everything, all those things. Proctoring hota hai and everything. But I think one more thing, as actuaries, I think 2 years before I gave one paper which had lot of equations, right? The CM2 paper. As actually, I didn't want to worry about कि मुझे क्या पढ़ना है, but मुझे typing सीखनी था, वो important कि equation typing सीखनी है, ये लिखना है, वो लिखना है. So I think some of these things by these institutes, I have mailed them also personally a lot of times.
That was at the initial stage. Now I think everyone has got equipped or have been used to and habituated to this new type of examination also.
Yes. So that's the case.
Got it. So IFOA and II are no real differences. Just depends on what your preference is. How many papers are there in terms of overall that you need to become an actuary?
So there are a total of 13 papers. This has changed from 2019. Prior to 2019, there were a total of 15 papers. Post 2019, the curriculum has changed of the institutes. So right now, if I talk about the curriculum, there are a total of 13 papers, where the initial papers are, they are called as CM, CS, CB, CP, SA and SP group, which is basically your actuarial mathematics, actuarial statistics, business. These are basically the initial few papers that Aayush was mentioning are more quant heavy. Post that, there's your core practices. So these will account a total of your 10 papers.
Okay.
Post this, there are 3 specialization papers that you need to clear. So there are certain papers which belong to life insurance, general insurance.
That's optional. That's the optional part. You can select your
Depending on the
specialization.
field which you want to get into.
So there are, for SPs, there are a couple of papers that IFOA, that the institutes schedule. You need to give any 2 of those papers. And essays, there are a couple of papers from which you need to give a total of 1 paper in order to qualify as an actuary.
Good. And what is the typical time span to clear these 13 papers, and how many can you attempt in a year?
So I don't think there's a limit on how many you can attempt in a year. And there's no cap on the number of attempts that you can give for each paper as well.
Open platform.
It's open, yeah. And if I talk about the average span, that really depends from person to person. I think the average can lie at around 5 to 7 years.
5 to 7 years, yeah.
That's how much time, because the institutes conduct papers twice a year, and depending on how many papers you are giving, and if you are working simultaneously, that'll be an important factor as to how many number of papers are you going to give in that year.
But practically, you all are saying that 2 papers is possible in a year. Like if you're talking about 7 years, so then 2 papers.
Yeah. 1 paper per attempt with job is possible.
Possible.
Initially, you can just crack a few papers.
When you're not working in here, you can.
And once the work it also starts, like when you're working and studying together, then it becomes difficult to give multiple papers simultaneously.
Correct.
That is the time when you have to just slow down for the papers.
Yeah.
I think one of the beautiful things about actuarial science, and Aayushi would agree to this because she's a CA also. In CA, let's say there are 4 papers, you want to clear them with the terms and conditions, right? Ki you have to get 40 marks in each subject, you have to then get 50% aggregate, this, that. You have to give 4 papers together also. No, I don't want to give, I want to give 1 paper. So in actuarial science, you can really decide that path by yourself. It's very important.
Flexibility is there.
If there is my brother's wedding, I won't give any paper, I will relax and I can give, let's say, 1 or 2 papers in the next attempt, right? And one more point to add, these 13 papers, they are no in any particular order. Let's say I'm a 40-year-old guy, I have a lot of insurance experience, 20 years of insurance experience, and if I think I can give the 10th paper directly, I can register for the exam and that can be my first paper. Right? So it's a very democratic and open platform with no terms and conditions. You give a paper, you prepare for it and only focus on that. So that's a very good thing.
Great. So while you are attempting these 13 papers, do you also need to pursue any degree in graduation, or like how do you manage that part of things?
You don't require as such as a compulsion. It is your choice.
But most people would end up taking for that graduation.
For the bachelor's course,
They would take up, but then that should be manageable because you're studying and along with your normal curriculum. You're just giving 1-2 papers. In fact, the initial stage would be quite comfortable as far as you complete the papers.
Okay.
Like, because as you mentioned that you have that background of maths or any core workings which you're doing, you have the habit of practice and all.
Correct.
So simultaneously, if it just works out, it's great.
Yeah.
And I think it's not a mandate from IFOA or the institute ki you do a degree simultaneously,
Yeah, exactly.
but it's the mandate from where the student will be working as a job. उनको चाहिए कि 12th pass नहीं, हमें we need a
Bachelor's
graduate,
चाहिए.
right? So that's a mandate from their end. Of course, if they are, let's say, it's all about hedging and seeing your options. I think Darshan gave an example, like he took science because he wanted to keep his options open, right? So people are, if they are very much convinced and very much, let's say, liking the fact that they want to pursue actuarial science, even let's say I'm not also clear on some things what I want to do with my life, right? But if someone is clear, they can go all in. But usually it's okay to, let's say, put your eggs in different baskets and see because how it is going. It's a long journey. It's a 13-paper journey. So you can give some papers, see how it works for you. And what also Aayushi mentioned earlier, that after clearing 4 or 5 papers also, even if you clear only 2 papers also, there is value added in your life which you can use anywhere. Like that is a very, very good thing. And after 4 papers also you end up getting a job, which we'll be talking about soon.
That's one
Yeah.
of the other thing that unlike some other profession,
Yes.
you need not clear all 13 papers for you to get your first job or
Yeah.
first internship.
So let's say I'm taking an attempt of 2 papers for a particular attempt. How many hours do I need to study? Maybe 3 months back. And where do I study from? Because this is like a correspondence program of sorts, right? You don't have any college, you don't have any institute. You are directly registered with an institute in UK or in India. But there is no real professor coming and teaching you. So how do you study and how many hours do you need to study?
So in terms of resources, in India there are a couple of coaching classes specific to actuarial science which will give you coaching for the initial few papers. In terms of resources that you can refer, so there are course notes that are released by both the institutes. I think that's one of the first step or one of the primary source that you can
It's
use
the
to
Bible,
study.
right?
Yeah.
That is the best thing which you should refer ideally, whether you want to go for coaching classes or whether you do not opt for it. That is the base from where you would not require any other thing as a reference material or as a guidance. If you are thorough with the course material and then strategy for the paper, like the strategy for the paper becomes important, which you can handle by solving some past papers, referring to some past questions, so that you understand what type of application will be there for these course notes. But the first step and foremost step would be the course notes given by the institute only, and it is common for the IFOA and IAI both. So you just have to pick a subject which you want, and the course notes of that is the best
Good
material.
enough to.
Yes.
Because you know that those are the related concepts that
It
you are
is
going to test
literally
it
from
on.
A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
It is
Okay.
in that simple terms.
Makes sense. And how many hours should a student study to clear, like, let's say 2 papers?
I don't think that
Yeah,
can be
specific.
commentable.
It's very much subjective, but okay, let's go into a scenario of our target audience, right? So they might not be working, they might be in a college, let's say, where they have classes from 7 a.m. to 12 noon, then they lunch, chill with friends and everything. So I had a choice to make whether I should go to NM college, the government one, or the NMIMS, right? The private one. Now a lot of people told me that here a lot of GDs happen, presentations happen, every day you have to wear formals, this, that and everything. You won't get enough time. Because I was clear in my head that I want to try for actuarial science, right? And I need some time to sit in library, let's say on a daily basis, right? So I thought I'll go into government one, right? Where I got a lot of autonomy to manage my time. So let's say during that time, 3 months before the exam, 2 to 5, 2 to 6, these 4 hours where I used to spend in the library, right? Saturday, Sunday, I used to, let's say, spend more 4 to 6 hours and everything. This is a scenario when I was giving 2 papers, right? Now, the study hours really depend on how I take up a particular subject, how much I like the subject and everything. It's very, very subjective. But I think, let's say if you're going 1 or 2 normal papers and everything, then I think 3 months before the exam, I think it's very important to start early.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think like paper diya hai, result aayega, and we'll decide then to start study. I think that kind of really creates the difference.
Yeah.
You have already lost you another 1.5 months for that then. And then it's a rush.
Right.
And in order to avoid that rush, I think when you're studying, planning becomes an important factor. Having milestones that, okay, itne time tak I'll complete the course notes, then I'll start with my practice of papers. So that becomes an important factor as well while you're preparing.
Just one thing to add. So in the actuarial science curriculum, only one thing is the basic requirement, that is consistency.
Correct.
You cannot fall in between during the study time also. Like if you tell that I've studied for 1 month, you take a 1 month break and then again study for another month, it is not going to work out very well.
Correct.
The same thing applies when he said that you have the flexibility of skipping an attempt, but if you take a very longer break, it will not keep that fire on in
The
you.
motivation. Right?
You have to be very consistent. That is the only very basic requirement for the completion of the goal, to reach to that completion of 13 papers.
It's a long course, perseverance,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
hanging in there is
So,
very important.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Because
how
there
do
will
you
be a lot of
actually stay
challenges.
motivated? Because let's compare to, let's say, a CA, right? A CA would clear in 4 years post 12th if they clear everything in the first attempt. But actually would probably take 8 to 9 years,
No.
assuming more than that.
No.
Less
No,
than,
no.
I mean, not exactly
Then
Then
8.
no,
Again, it's very
not only,
flexible.
Not 8.
Yeah.
Not even 8, because initially we are expecting to be a bit faster. Then
Correct.
it might pace down because
Correct.
we have our jobs coming in together.
Right.
And then you have to manage, and as I said, you have to slow down.
Correct.
But 4 years guarantee is not in CA also.
Hmm.
It might take 5 years, it might take 6 years, we don't know. But here, if you are consistent to the level where you were consistent for a CA degree, so 5 years down the line, or maybe just excluding the toughest papers, like toughest papers in manner of subjectivity, if you exclude that, 5 years, 6 years should be good enough if you are consistent throughout.
Correct. The reason I asked you this question was because I have friends, who are in their 30s now, and they started actually post 12th. So they are done with only 10 papers, and because they started working in the last 6 years, and they're getting a good package, good salary, and all of that, they've kind of lost the
Consistency.
motivation to
Yes.
finish. So
But then there is a difference line for that 10 papers, 11 papers, and the completion, like once
Correct.
you are a qualified actuary.
correct.
That is the main difference line which should keep you motivated, that whatever is the expectation from this course as a qualified professional, that is not only up till 10, 11 papers, it's from a qualified actuary.
I think it's that motivation fire of let's say finishing what we started in the
started.
first
Yeah.
place.
If you've started, let's not leave it in between.
And also I think the goal, because we talked a lot about years 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
7, the goal is not to become an actuary in less than 5 years or more than 5
Yeah.
years. The goal is to become an actuary,
Correct.
right? And everyone's journey will be different, right? Someone might do, let's say, a CFA in between, someone might do a CA in between, someone might, let's say, get married in between and then they're not given any papers for 2 years. But the goal is to become an actuary and eventually reaching there.
And I think the factor of motivation it comes into picture more significantly when you failed an attempt. Because in actuarial science, I think like a lot of students, a lot of professionals who are now qualified have also completed the qualification by reattempting papers a lot of times. Like I know people who have their reattempts twice or thrice. But just hang. I think this will be the things that all of us will agree. Just hang in there. Keep your consistency in place and you'll get through.
It's a marathon, it's not like a sprint race, right? So you just have to run.
I also feel we have talked a lot about the word exemption, but we couldn't explain what exemption is.
Yeah.
So exemption is just something, let's say you do a particular course or do a particular paper from somewhere, and getting exempted it from somewhere means you will get the recognition, but you don't have to give the exam again from the other institute.
Interesting. So what kind of exemptions does an Indian student have?
So an Indian student, so let's say if I'm a chartered accountant, I get 2 papers of exemption from the Indian one. Okay, she's
And
right.
that is from Indian Institute.
I think CT2, is it?
No.
ST0, right?
Only ST0. And that also from Indian Institute only.
So that means that out of the 13 papers, you just have to give the remaining 12 papers, provided you are a chartered accountant and you register with IIA. So that is the exemption that we're talking about.
Perfect.
Any other interesting exemptions?
CFA.
CFA, yeah.
CFA I think is from IFOA level again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that has the maximum exemption.
That used to have the maximum exemption. So
Yeah.
actually I am a CFA level 2 candidate.
Okay.
Okay. So the reason of starting CFA was not getting exemptions because I had already cleared all those papers, but I had keen interest in finance, stock markets, and all of that. So I started CFA, and the beauty happened again because I studied the first 7 papers very nicely for actuarial science. For me, giving the CFA level 1 exam was not very difficult, right? It was very nice. So back then, if you clear all 3 levels of CFA, there were like 5 papers of exemption. But now, after the curriculum changed, the 13 papers happened. I think we only have 2 or 3 now.
So you get CF, yeah, that papers
Papers
are
got
changed.
clubbed
So
and everything.
ST0 is now SP0.
Yeah.
Yeah. So CFA, if you clear CFA level 1, you get exemptions for 2 papers, and once you complete your CFA and you are CFA charter holder, you get, I think, 1 more paper of exemption now.
Yeah. So I don't think from a course standpoint, there are a lot of good exemption arrangements because let's say if I want to do actuarial science, I'll anyway sign up for the IFOA course.
Yeah.
But if, let's say, because we are talking about exemption, and if a student is very sure that he wants to pursue actuarial science, a very big disclaimer, this is only for someone who really wants to build a career in actuarial science or quant finance. There are also institutes in India which kind of offer, and they have an agreement between them and IFOA where they can get exemptions. Now when I say they can get exemptions, not everyone will get exemptions, right? They kind of make a I think
There are conditions on
there are
thresholds,
conditions or thresholds.
yeah.
They have to reach a certain mark and everything.
Certain credit score is what.
Yeah, certain
Yeah,
credit score.
so the papers or the curriculum from IFOA is divided across the program.
Okay.
So there, like let's say if there are 6 subjects in one sem, there may be 3 subjects that are linked to those exemptions. So, and let's say there's one paper A from IFOA, that paper A will be, let's say, divided 50% in one of the semester and 50% in another semester.
Okay.
So you need to have you need to be above a certain threshold that is decided by the institutes. And if you are above the threshold on a weighted average basis on, let's say, in this 50% and in this 50%, then you'll be eligible to get that exemption.
Okay. And which are these institutes that we're talking about?
There are various institutes, like globally there are many. I think in the UK there are many institutes. In India there is one called as IAQS, which Darshan talked about earlier, Institute of Actuarial and Quant Studies. It's located in Mumbai, like finance ka mandir, so it kind of is very much relevant also. Now both of these, like, they offer BSc in actuarial science programs and masters in actuarial science programs. Given we are very much catering to school students and all of these people, so I think BSc is something which will be useful for them. They have kind of divided the first 6-7 papers of actuarial science into 3 years, right? There is industry faculty there, right? So they can also kind of tell about practical applications and everything, right? And the course is very much tailored to actuarial science. I know I studied accounts and finance. I always had to study for my actuarial exam and my college exam separately. I know I didn't study much for my college exam, but still there was always a difference because I am, let's say, studying accounts, or let's say communications for my college, and I am studying, let's say, integration for my actual science paper. But here your time can get very much saved, and you can channelize your energy in one direction.
Good. So if I understand this correctly, instead of, let's say, pursuing a BCom and going to a coaching institute and then studying actuary, what you can do is you can enroll into an institute like IAQS, where you also get a degree of BSc Actuarial Science, but you also have a chance to get exemptions up to 6 papers from IFOA.
Darshan can give us a ratio. Let's say if there are 50 people in the class, what can be a percent who can get all the exemptions? I think 10-20% maybe.
Yeah, I think that's for all 6 paper exemption. But again, as everyone discussed, that it's divided across the semester. It's not like if you are above the threshold for 3 papers, you can't get the exemption for 3 papers. So there are a lot who have gotten exemption for 1 paper, 3 paper, 4 papers. So that ratio then differs.
So let's say out of 100, 20 might get all, 20 might not get anything. Okay, and the 60 will get something, let's say 3 to 4 or something like that.
So IAQS is something that a student can consider in their overall planning of the roadmap. When does an actuary start earning? Like, how many papers do they need to clear? Like, is there a minimum 4 papers clear? What is the industry average that they look at while giving them jobs?
I don't feel there is any number of papers. In fact, back then, I have seen job descriptions which say intent to pursue actuarial science, right?
That was back
in the time. So coming back to it, maybe I think 2 papers or 3 papers are kind of a good threshold.
Quite good for
You can start with that.
But that is an internship or a full-time role?
I think you can get depends on where you are in your education journey. but I think it's possible to get a job as well. Obviously, there'll be factors which will differ from a person who has cleared 5 to 6 papers, but it's possible to get jobs even at 2 to 3 papers.
Ideally, internship would be easier and helpful also, because that is the time when they teach and a lot of things they get introduced for the first time.
Right.
First thing is that they are getting introduced to the professional platform as an entry. They do not have any other background of maybe insurance or banking or finance because they are entering as students yet. So internship would help them to make that base very strong, and then they can easily then switch for any of the jobs which they wish.
Good.
That's the best time where you can explore yourself, what interests you in the broad domain of actuarial science.
So let's assume, I am a student who's cleared 6 papers. I am done with my graduation degree, let's say a BCom or a BFM. What kind of salary packages can I expect from the industry?
6 papers. First job.
First job. And maybe I have a little bit of internship experience.
Okay, let's say if
6
you have a
papers.
6-month internship experience, something
Yeah.
like that, I think a number of around 8 to 9 lakh per annum.
Yeah, so the range can be from 7 to 11.
Yeah, 7 to 11.
7 to
It
11,
can be
12
high, but I
can be
just
the range,
averaged it out. So yeah.
But yeah, that's a good, I think it's almost at par with someone who's finished their CA. Because right now the CA fresher salaries are somewhere in the range of 10 to 12 lakhs.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're done with half the program, you have almost the same kind of a CTC. That's great. And what is the potential that an actuary can earn, right? People have heard that 1 crore ka salary milta hai on clearing 13 papers. So
Again, on clearing that 13 papers, that is the very big asterisk mark.
Right.
So till then you have that expectation, that is a very big no.
And
Yeah.
I don't think after, so I am let's say 2 papers away from my fellowship. Now my school friends kind of tease me कि अब फिर 2 papers करोड़ रुपए लगा
मतलब हाँ, जैसे पैर रख दिया उस बार तो मतलब
बिल्कुल भी नहीं है, right? And the fact that the compensation is derived by 3 things: one, the number of papers, the experience, and the value you are adding at the company.
Yeah.
Right? Let's say 10 years of experience, but let's say I didn't do much good projects. I didn't I didn't learn more, and I didn't create, let's say, more transformation. So I don't think that package is justified, right? So the myth, and I think we are bursting it out now only, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है कि 1 करोड़ का पैकेज 15 पेपर या 13 पेपर होते ही लग जाएगा. But as compared to other careers, when we see other careers, it's definitely a rewarding career. And if you let's say I'm just taking a scenario of a 27, 28-year-old person who has, let's say, 5 to 6 years of experience, a fellow also, he or she can earn, I think, somewhere in north of, let's say, 35 to 40 lakhs, which is equivalent to, let's say, ISB MBA graduating, right? So I think from that angle it's very rewarding, and of course after a certain point you'll reach that 1 crore number also, I promise, but not immediately. So yeah.
So which industries can an actuary work in? Like we've spoken about insurance, he gave an example of climate change, but what are the real jobs that are available, let's say, in India?
in insurance also, let's not club it just insurance. In insurance also we have multiple areas. We have life insurance, we have general insurance, and we have a third leg in that only for pensions and valuations.
Okay.
So while internship also, when we said that we can explore, that is the point where you want to, if insurance is the base where you want to get into, then also you have 3 options where you would like to go, whether you're liking that or no. Other than insurance, banking and risk advisory, as he told, he's also, I think, in Deloitte. Yeah, so he's from consultancy background where he's into the risk team only. Third thing is, he is into insurtech. So there also any technological requirements which drives a lot of data maybe, or a lot of big audience, wherein we would require some system base or application base, or something from IT also, that has also pitched in. And me being from finance background, so even I have an open platform for risk team for my core actuarial work in the insurance industry or outside also.
Yeah. So let's do this. Let's try to break down a day in the life of an actuary, or maybe some project that all of you all have worked on. If you all can just describe what typically you all do on a daily basis to a student who is in their 11th or 12th, so that they can kind of envision what their career is going to look like.
So yeah, to start, like if you have started working, then first you'll have to manage your work hours and you'll have to manage your studies also. Right. So if you are a student and a professional together, so either you fetch your time for studies early in the morning or maybe after returning from your office, and some extra efforts during the weekends.
Right.
So this happens mainly so ideally there is a difficult balance till the time you're pursuing papers, because you do not really get a very big quantum of time for yourself for other than your professional path, professional or career path. But then there are always breaks, and there are always some times where you can just have a period of 1 month, 2 months where you do not have to slog to this level, and it completely depends on how your work environment is. Because if even they are supportive, so even in corporates, even in consultancies, now they are very supportive with the study leave policies and all. So even that helps you to manage your studies along with the work. So it's not always that way that you are coming into a lot of pressure without any support. But yes, consistency should be there, otherwise you'll lose.
And what does a day look like, for someone who's working in the insurance industry? Like, what kind of work do you do on a daily basis? Like, do you work on mathematical models or?
So again, it depends on the role. So when I talked about insurance also, the 3 legs, but in that also, the main 2 major areas, if I talk, will be about the pricing and reserving in an insurance industry. So when I'm talking about pricing, it too will include a lot of modeling and all. But when you talk about reserving, maybe some standards are set. So you have to just then deep dive into the risk analysis pertaining to the products and lines of business and everything.
Got it. Makes sense.
That would not involve a lot of modeling as compared to the pricing.
So again, depends on what role you are in.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
So what about risk consulting? Sorry, you want
No worries.
So being in a consultancy, you work a lot of time on a daily basis goes with your clients, communicating with your clients, because you are placed on projects for specific clients. So specifically, if I talk about myself, I work with a lot of banks. We work on mathematical models. Basically, so if I just take an example, a layman example, let's say I am talking a specific role of market risk. So let's say there's a bank who has purchased a bond from the open market. So अगर कल interest rates change होते हैं, तो what is going to be the loss for on my book? What is basically the value of my current holdings? So on a daily basis, we help bank mitigate these risks. We help them in validating the models. And I think one of the biggest factor or one of the biggest role across, I think, all the domains that is going to lie is regulatory compliance. So let's say if I talk about insurance, there's IRDAI. If I talk about banking, there's RBI. Ensuring that your company or your clients are complying or following the rules that the regulator is taking. So that's another factor on a daily basis that you look after for your clients or for your company.
Perfect.
So I think from a job angle, there are 2 parts to it. Adding on to what Aayushi said, there is one the study part and there is one work part. Let's say if I have only done a course, let's say MBA or a CA, and I don't want to study more, my work would look like Monday to Friday. I'll work maybe weekends, I'll chill, I'll network, I'll meet people. But unfortunately, in actuarial science, it doesn't happen this way. Time management is very important when handling your routine also. Like from childhood, we have been listening 12th के बाद सब कुछ sort है, college में सब sort है. But unfortunately, actually समय job के बाद भी सब कुछ sort है, right? Because you really the weekend plan is that कौन सी library जा रहे हैं अपन, क्या कर रहे हैं, क्या पढ़े, revision notes लेके आए,
कितना complete करना है.
All of these are the weekend plans. So it is something which is important. And I'm not saying that this is for someone जो बहुत late खत्म कर रहा है. I think for an average person who's completing actuarial science, she might need to give papers, let's say, for at least 3-4 years while working. I think that's the average go. Now I think I'll just give an example to kind of break it down how actuarial science kind of can look like and what we can do. So let's take a life insurance and general insurance example. So in general insurance, if I'm buying a car insurance policy, every year I'll renew my policy, right? So the policy term is only 1 year, for example, right? So every year the policy will be renewed or purchased again. Now from an actuarial standpoint, मेरे को जो premiums आ रहे हैं, मुझे वो कैसे invest करने हैं, वो पूरा change हो जाएगा as compared to a life insurance. Life insurance में मैं जब premium लेता हूँ, it's for a 60-year risk, it's for a 50-year risk which I'm insuring, right? So I think these two are very different approaches where an actuary can lead, and all these predictions, likelihoods, and example, a lot of assumption setting is done. We assume a lot of things. There are a lot of regulations by IRDAI, which is the insurance regulator in India, and all of that. And this is very much insurance specific, but anywhere where the skill is being used is, let's say, assumption setting, creating projections, and doing, let's say, stress testing and scenario analysis. Let's say I reduce my interest rate from, let's say, 5%, increase from 5%, how are my results changing, whether I'll have sufficient funds to, let's say, cater to my responsibility or not. So all these things, I think, dealing with numbers, but I really want to emphasize one more fact, because eventually actuarial people will be the future leaders also, will be the future business leaders also. So just sticking to number skills is not sufficient, right? We need to communicate with people. We need to, let's say, have that front end role also, because as a consultant, let's say he stays in Deloitte for the next 10-12 years, and if he becomes a partner, right? So as a partner, his task is not to, let's say, see कि अगर interest rate गिरेगा तो क्या होगा, but his task is to goes to conferences and get clients. To get clients, you have to focus on communication, collaboration.
So that is not only for consultants. Internally also insurance industry. So I am in general insurance industry. There also you have to communicate to a lot of stakeholders, to the underwriters, to the claims team, to understand how actual underwriting is happening, how the actual claims are getting settled, what are the challenges, where you analyze and investigate frauds.
Correct.
Why you do not expect this to go ahead, what can be the triggers which can help them. After that also when you're reserving, and what he was talking was mainly, when I talked about pricing and reserving, he was talking about the third leg, that was asset and liability management or capital modeling to a very broader area, which is also upcoming very vastly in the industry nowadays, and going forward also it is going to take a very good pace. So not only pricing and reserving, but yes, asset modeling also, capital modeling also is going to play a very major role.
Super.
This is where even I think the institutes are focusing, because if you see the curriculum, there are papers which are also focused on soft skills. So there's one of the paper wherein you are tested as to how you are communicating your technical content to a non-technical audience. So not using jargons, the way you are like your content is structured, etc. And as Aayush mentioned, that there will be certain papers that you will be working alongside your job. I think the later papers, basically your SP or specialization papers, an important factor is you will require your work experience in order to crack those papers.
That helps you assess you for understanding the knowledge which is tested in your papers. So it always works hand in hand. The experience always assists you, and it is difficult to actually crack those principal tested papers or core principal papers, where, or core practices papers also, where you have to actually understand the problem from a practical aspect and not only a theory perspective.
Like, I think someone should not interpret from this, just we all said that it's difficult to give papers with your job, but it is the only way to do it. It's not a good idea to clear all your papers and then go for it.
Yeah, you cannot.
Even if someone, let's say, let's say one or two outliers can clear the papers, I'm not saying that, but it's not a good idea at all, because the specialized papers which Darshan talked about, what specialization I want to choose, that will kind of be derived from my work experience. So it's very important. And one of the very important skill for an actuary, or I think for any career, is that communicating complex ideas in simple language. I think that is very, very important, because if I'm not able to explain as an actuary to the underwriting team कि ये assumption है, ये likelihood है, वो बोलेगा हमको नहीं पता assumption likelihood क्या है. We have to break it down very nicely so that it is easier for the technical audience, and we have a specialized paper for this also, as he mentioned.
So we spoke about soft skills. What are some technical tools or skills that one should know, towards the later end of the career? Like, for example, a designer needs to know Photoshop, a CA probably needs to know SAP and Tally. What is the specific tools for an actuary?
I think an important one is coding.
Coding, and I think Excel. If I have to pick one, it's Excel actually.
And they need to be like at the advanced version, or like intermediate level is also good enough?
I think for starters, basic to intermediate is okay, right? But once again, it's something you learn on the job and everything. There is a software called as, for example, in life insurance, it's called as Profit. There might be other software in GI.
SQ we have for reserving.
Correct. And all of this is on the job training?
All of that is on the job training, but basic tools and technologies have been introduced in our curriculum itself. we have now R and basic Excel in
wow.
the IFOA and IAI curriculum itself. It is being tested just to give a base to the students who are entering this curriculum. After that, we have a lot or n number of tools which we can explore, which helps us in our daily day-to-day work. So for pricing, he's telling it, modeling and all is important. So for that we have SAS, we have R, we have Python, we have multiple options, and which suits to which company and which suits to that person. Yes, you should have some technical acumen so that you are getting used to it and you can handle a lot of big data.
Correct.
The basic requirement is Excel, but Excel will not be able to handle that
everything.
quantum
Data.
of data. That is the only challenge over there, because of which you need a lot of other softwares coming in. But with experience, when you move ahead, I think the core modeling part or the core technological work reduces down as you gain experience and you go to the seniority level, because then it's more about the inputs which you give rather than the core work which you do.
I think what we'll feel is that initial 5-7 years we'll feel that जो कुछ भी पढ़ा था यहाँ तो सिर्फ टेक्नोलॉजी काम आ रही है, एक्सेल काम आ रहा है, प्रॉफिट काम आ रहा है, ये वो we might not be able to see on some days that, you know, I'm not applying, let's say, a proper concept which I studied to my work, but what she said that at a seniority level, let's say at 30-35 or somewhere at that level, you'll just apply the principles which you kind of studied in your papers.
Yeah.
I think that is very much important. And there is always a debate between what is the difference between a data scientist and an actuary. So data scientist is someone who's an expert with coding, machine learning, algorithms and everything. But when we kind of add business acumen to that recipe, then we kind of make an actuary out of it. Because data scientist does not have the business domain knowledge, or, you know, the contextual knowledge. Let's say if she's a GI actuary, though he might not have a general insurance background.
So we were just reading some stats. I think there are around 8,000 odd actuaries who've registered, including the students, and there are only less than 1,000 people who have finished all the 13 papers as of 2023. We don't have the latest numbers. So why do you think there is a big gap? Is it because of the difficulty of the papers, or is it because there isn't enough demand in the industry? Because when we compare it to a country like, let's say, US, there are 50,000 actuaries. So what do you think is the main reason for such a less output of actuaries in our country?
I don't think there's no demand for actuaries. I think the demand is increasing.
It is increasing and it is going to increase to a very great extent. So no demand or any crunch on the employment opportunities for an actuary is not what we would be expecting any day down the line. So that is a complete wrong illusion that can be a problem in the future. We have a lot of CAs, if you say, then there you can understand that they have a very wide field also, so it would not happen that even they might have some employment opportunities problem. But for CAs, they are specialized and they have a skill set which is a requirement of the industry nowadays and going forward. So it's not about the demand. Second thing is, why so less? Because it's still exploring in our country. So if we talk about demand also, today the Indian actuaries also are exploring the abroad opportunities.
Correct.
They would always pursue their career continuation outside India also, and in India also it's expanding. But the level of completions, so if we have a stats of the ones who have qualified actuaries, we should ideally also analyze, we do not have that data of course, but if we have some idea about the persons or the number of students who are in between from 8 to 10 papers, that will be a very high number as compared to the qualified actuaries. And the students, they have just entered, so I don't think it's a correct comparison, because the qualified actuaries will be less, but you can understand that they have much, like halfway down
Almost
के भी
there,
बहुत ज़्यादा
Makes
होंगे.
sense.
I think the one more reason is a lot of people don't know about actuarial
Awareness,
science. It's
yeah.
still and
It's still evolving.
and because they don't, like, even if let's say a person knows but he doesn't have other people who he knows are pursuing actuarial science, that becomes then a negative factor. Okay, I don't have anyone else who I know is pursuing actuarial science, then I may need to reconsider whether I should pursue this career or not.
So a friend of mine had given me a very funny analogy. They said that actuary, and obviously she was studying actuary. She said that actuaries are like the Parsi community of our country, right? It's a very closely knit community. Not many people know about them. You can't find them, but internally each of them know each other and they are helping each other out.
Yes. So just adding to, of course, the awareness is a very big reason because still maybe that's the reason we are doing this, right?
Hopefully this should help the
Yeah,
students.
yeah. And I think one more thing, if just to kind of throw some statistics as to why the demand is not a problem, because the insurance penetration in the country is less than 5%, right? And I think any individual once he or she gets a 50,000 rupees job, the first thing he or she should do is get an insurance policy, maybe for himself or medical, because that's unnecessary, right? You are creating a 15 lakh, 20 lakh asset for yourself if you're, let's say, buying a medical policy. So once this penetration kind of keeps on increasing, we are seeing some companies like ACO, we are seeing companies like Onsurity and these companies who are getting various good products, and the customer experience is too good, right? Let's say the claim settlement and all of that also. So this is one reason, I think, the insurance penetration. And second, if you see 2 years, 3 years before, we never thought that COVID can happen. We never thought that something like this, the country can come to standstill for 21 days. We never thought this. And eventually there might be new types of diseases. I really hope it doesn't happen, but there might be some new type of diseases coming in, some new type of risks coming in, and to kind of assess them, we need actuaries.
Correct.
Right? So I don't think there's a demand problem, but the awareness problem and a narrative problem. That if, okay, even I feel sometimes, okay, I'm trying this time, I'll try for 1 more year, and nahi to theek hai, I'll go along with my life. I'll go and party on a weekend, right? Even I feel that sometimes, because that motivation narrative kind of flickers a bit, but okay, we are right back on track. That's why I think what she said about consistency is really important. You might not become an actuary by a certain age, but that number will be very high. From 8 to 10 papers will be very, very high.
Makes sense.
We're almost there.
So the demand is there, jobs are available easily. Is it possible to move abroad only basis 13 papers, or do you also need to pursue some masters, maybe if you want to move to UK or US?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, let's say if you're already working, you have the opportunities for internal transfers abroad. So that may not necessarily have a condition that you need to have masters, but the number of papers and obviously the recommendation of the current employer is possible to give you an internal transfer abroad.
Yeah. So let's say someone has an aspiration, let's say as a 12th grader, that I want to settle in the UK or the US or somewhere, then they can kind of make their roadmap accordingly. I would, let's say, I know, let's say, honestly, I also had the narrative of settling there, but the way I am seeing kind of the India's next 25 years and how Modi ji also called it Amrit Kal, so I really want to be in this phase of India, right? But let's say if someone is very much convinced to settle in the UK, I will do my actuaries from IFOA, right? I will probably work with a global group, right? Not an Indian specific industry company, right? I will work with an MNC. It can be a consultancy, it can be a global group, let's say Willis Towers Watson, something like that, and eventually work there for 3-4 years, show my merit, and then convince them for an internal transfer. There are a lot of my friends who have taken these transfers and they are like happily settled there.
So global opportunity is also available. What is the impact of AI on this industry? Like, is it here to replace jobs, or is it to make things better? And Aayush, I think you've been doing a lot of work with AI in this particular industry. So if you can just...
Yeah, okay. So I think there are two different things. One is AI and one is generative AI, right? So AI definitely a lot of insurance companies is using already, right? The kind of recommendations they do, the kind of data points they are able to collect, especially in GI companies. I read some research papers, the kind of at every onboarding process, the kind of data is collected, it's too good. And I think this is increasing with time. But now with generative AI, right, where the AI can kind of learn from itself, things can be really groundbreaking. Like just one example. So I am kind of currently working on a use case where an insurance company needs to deal with a lot of data. And basically the actuary kind of summarizes that data and take a call on it. Okay. Now, for example, there is a lot of data. I want to launch a new product in a village of India or in a tier 2, tier 1 city of India, right? And I want to just interact with my data. Let's say if I launch this product, who are the people who are 25-year-old female and something like that, and anything about the data, I can kind of customize my entire GPT, the chat GPT, given its data. I can train the model entire on my company's data, and I can ask the questions. Now it has the power of ChatGPT also to analyze stuff. It has the power of my data also. So both of things very beautifully kind of merge, and they kind of can help me. And not only in this, let's say claim analysis, and I think there is a lot of monotonous work also which an actuary needs to do. Sometimes creating reports and let's say creating minutes of meeting and everything. I'm telling you, the other day I was not feeling very well at work and I could not take a leave also because it was an important client meeting and I was given the task of minutes of meeting, right? So I just used, let's say, an AI who kind of transcribed the entire meeting for me, summarized everything, and it kind of also told me the actionables. And the entire document I sent it directly to my, after reviewing of course, to my manager, and he was very happy, right? So I think for anyone as a student also and as a professional also, if there can be two mindsets. One can be in the that we are not even believing it, ठीक है AI कुछ है, कुछ नहीं करेगा ये वो. That's the not the right approach, and one can be we become very panic कि AI आ गया है, कुछ करने का मतलब ही नहीं है, कुछ मतलब ही नहीं है, पापा का business ही कर लेते हैं, यही कर लेते हैं, कुछ मतलब नहीं. These both mindsets are not right. Of course, now once ChatGPT has come, once generative AI has come, and this technology is here to stay. Nowhere we are going in the back era, right? Because we are increasing at a much faster speed, and it's very important to have a mindset which is a collaborative mindset, that I have an intern or a colleague or a partner anywhere on the tips of my hand where I can take some help, take some research, take some advice. If you have an interview also, you can use ChatGPT to kind of prep you for the interview, right? If you are, let's say, are nervous before an interview, it can counsel you. So I think from every use case point of view, it can be very used given we use it with the right context and keeping the integrity and ethics in place. I think if that is happening, it's extremely important.
So I read this somewhere that AI is not here to replace your jobs, but your laziness to adapt to AI will definitely replace your jobs.
Yes. So AI will not replace your jobs, period. Of course, last week, let's say we fired, let's say 6 content creators or 6 content writers, and we kind of hired one who knew prompt engineering and who knew, let's say, how to interact with AI, right? So I don't think AI replaced the job, but the person who knew AI replaced the person of those 6 people. So that's very important to see. Yeah.
Makes sense. Any other emerging trends that we would like to cover as part of the industry?
Cyber.
Okay.
So cyber risk is again a very big threat in the coming times
Okay.
with the increasing use of technology.
So when you say
Not-
cyber risk, you refer to like frauds or?
Yes,
Okay.
frauds which happen over the use of technology. Maybe it can have a financial impact, it may not have. But and it is a risk which is not only restricted to companies, but it is also for all individuals. Currently, we do not see that much of cases with respect to the frauds and all, at least reported to us, like from individuals and companies of the Indian clientele.
Right.
But from abroad, if we have that clientele also, we have already seen the spike.
Okay.
So with the climate risk change and the cyber risk, these two are the major areas which are covering the general insurance right now.
Interesting. Anything else that someone wants to add?
I think one thing which kind of like we are also working on at our company, but I see a lot of startups doing it also. If you see any startup, right, Blinkit or let's say Zomato or everything, these have become billion-dollar businesses, and I think by one thing they have just worked on one thing, which is the convenience, right? Only convenience. And I think any startup which kind of can make my job easier. Of course, it's not difficult for me to go down and take, let's say, a packet of milk, but I don't do that if I'm living in Bombay, right? If I can. And I don't know how they are doing it. They are burning money, not burning money. मुझे अगर 50 रुपए में दूध आ रहा है, तो it's okay for me. It's completely okay, right? So from that angle, I think right now also when we have web aggregators and everything, we have Policy Bazaar and all of that. So if I'm, let's say, searching for a life insurance GI policy, I have 10, 15, 20 policies in front of me, and it kind of tells me, okay, I have to analyze. Now I don't know, let's say, about what is this accidental cover, what is this, and there's term and conditions. So I told my dad ki let's take this policy. He said that let's get an agent in between. That level of trust अभी वो नहीं है कि हम directly उससे ले लेंगे web aggregator से. अगर agent को let's say 500 रुपए ज़्यादा भी देना पड़ेगा महीने का, तो भी the Indian mindset is that they'll go from that level. So I think what is very much happening nicely in this space is, and this is very much possible through generative AI, a lot of data points can be collected, and there can be that one master product, one customized product which can be sold to that person, right? So through APIs, right, we can talk to a lot of data points, and we can fetch so many data of an individual. We'll of course take some level of data from the person coming from the policy, and analyzing everything, the speed can be really increased through GPT and the transformer technology, and eventually there can be one product that Aayush, this product is perfect for you, and why this is perfect for you. If I can have these two answers within AI in, let's say, less than 1 minute, I can be very much convinced, and eventually once my trust increases, I can buy from there also. So this customized product buying and everything can be very, very good.
So one thing to add on again over here, the regulator plays a very major role, at least specific to the insurance industry, so that the policy holders are not at compensation for any mis-selling or any frauds from the insurance companies. So when he's talking about a customized standard product for any individual who is coming for buying some sort of cover or some sort of insurance to take a cover for his risk, ideally he would be given that from any insurance company. Like the regulators play a very major role. The step one is already done by the regulator by giving out some standard products.
Correct.
They have given the flexibility of rates and everything also now. It is a constantly evolving part. And one thing what he was talking about, like not AI perspective, but now a lot of transparency has also come up between any two associations. Now that can be a regulator, that can be a customer, that can be an insurance company. They have made those rules compulsory to keep that transparency, and which helps a lot of more employment opportunities, very frankly. Why? Because the reporting work has increased. So when we were talking about that pricing, reserving and capital modeling, so we have another aspect over there which he told that regulatory compliance is very important for any background of insurance work or any background of actuarial work.
Right.
So in that context, what we want to highlight is that when you have to be so compliant, a dedicated team for that is also required.
Got it.
So someone who is not into very much of core actuarial works also has an open option which is exploring.
Perfect. So room of opportunities.
Yeah. In addition, as you were saying that compliance, so I think your compliance. So I think a lot of one more emerging risk could be the non-financial risk. So your cyber, your climate risk, all of which would fall under non-financial risk, which basically does not have a direct financial impact, but is going to have an impact on your business. So factors like a third-party risk management. Right now, regulators are coming up with regulations relating to outsourcing of your services, may it be in India, may it be abroad to any of the other company. So risk related to your outsourcing or third-party management. There are risks related to data. There's the data protection bill of 2023 that is regulated. So I think as a group, non-financial risks are also emerging. Operational risk, a lot of institutions, there are dedicated compliance functions which basically look after whether the operations of the company are in compliance with the policies that they have set, whether they are compliant with the SOPs that they have, regulations, etc. So I think NFRs or the non-financial risk aspect is also booming right now.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered most of our agenda today. One final takeaway or one final advice for a 15 or a 16-year-old boy or a girl who wants to pursue actuary. What is that one advice that you guys would want to give?
Any student who is ready to dedicate their normal inputs or time for any other course than actuarial science also, then they can easily manage actuarial science too. So it's not that it is very difficult, but the dedication which is expected in any other course, it should not be anything lesser than that. Then there is no way that you would not be able to make it.
And I specifically also want to ask you, because a lot of students ask us, should I go for CA or should I go for actuary? And because you've done both, I think you're the best person to also answer if they had to pick one. So what should be the reasons for selecting?
This is the most common question. Like even in my office, they ask. So I am a professor since last 5 years. So even each student who just comes up and they are like, "अरे आप CA हो तो फिर actuarial science क्यों कर रहे हो? मतलब या तो CA की कोई value नहीं." So as I said that a CA curriculum or the exam structure has again a very wide variety of aspects with respect to taxation, with respect to audit aspects and everything, but or the financial or accounting aspects, which is the base. Like, but if you do not want to get into that, a CA mainly trains you to accept or face any challenge. Today, if I am given a new work, okay, which is not related to say finance background, which is not related to anything which I've covered previously in my any study curriculum. But I know that if I have to analyze this, how can I go about it? It just gives a very strategic view and a management perspective. When I'm talking CA versus Actuarial Science, CA की एग्ज़ाम्स सब एक साथ होती है, जैसे इसने बोला कि अगर एक एग्ज़ाम भी तुम पास नहीं हुए, यू हैव टू गिव द एंटायर ग्रुप और मे बी बोथ द ग्रुप्स एज पर योर चॉइस, बट इट इज़ managing that entire span of your exams together. It is a very much pressure managing oriented, like pressure management is the core thing which you have to be very much specialized in, because उसने बोला हर एग्जाम में 40 चाहिए, मतलब हर पेपर में 40 चाहिए, ओवरऑल एग्रीगेट 50 चाहिए,
राइट.
वो एक साथ जो पेपर्स आ रहे हैं वो 8 दिन में, मतलब एक पेपर गंदा गया, यू हैव टू फर्स्ट इन द एग्जाम टाइमिंग यू हैव टू फर्स्ट फेच दोज 40 मार्क्स, बिकॉज उसके अलावा तो वो लोग वो पेपर ऐसा सेट नहीं कर सकते. मतलब पेपर कितना भी गंदा है, पहले वो 40 मार्क ढूंढो, वो 40 मार्क मिल गए, अब इसमें तो मैं 60 की एक्सपेक्टेशन से चल रहा था, तो कल के पेपर में और 10 मार्क एक्स्ट्रा ढूंढो.
Correct.
So you have to manage that as a continuous cycle. As against that, you don't want to build that much management or stress taking skills. You want to go into the core work.
Right.
You want to analyze things more deeply. Then it is about actuarial science. Here you take up one paper, you just do research over it, you just understand the concepts very well, you build a base over it, you will crack it.
Perfect.
Here you do not need so much of managing skills, you do not, of course that 3 years paper you have to manage well. मैं आज भी मेरे स्टूडेंट्स को, मतलब कितना भी इजी पेपर हो या कितना भी डिफिकल्ट पेपर हो, I strictly tell them that fetch every half a mark. You don't know where you will gain it, you don't know where you are going to lose it.
And sometimes the difference is that half mark only.
Yeah.
passing
Yeah,
and failing.
you have to literally, I don't even say 1 mark, I say fetch every half a mark in your paper. So that is there for both the curriculums, but here it is about how much stress taking and management you can do, here how much you can deep dive into the core work which you want to do.
Yes, that's fair enough. How about you, Darshan?
I think so. Whoever is pursuing actuarial science, it's an evolving field. It's not going to be that at a point everything is going to be stagnant. It's an evolving field. Keep upskilling yourself and just hanging there. It may look, whenever you start, it may look daunting that you have to clear 13 papers. It's going to be a long 6 to 7 years of journey. But it's if you give in your 100%, if you are consistent, if you've worked hard, and you are enjoying the experience, you are enjoying the journey, it will be a rewarding.
And just to add on what he was telling, काफ़ी लोगों को ऐसा लगता है कि इसमें तो इतना क्या ही काम कर लेंगे ये लोग, मतलब कितना होगा ये, मतलब ऐसा क्या काम कर लेते होंगे. Every day after a certain point it is going to be a monotonous work. So in actuarial science it is how much you can explore. Every day you can build an opportunity, or if you do not want to explore, you can just sit and continuously do the same monotonous work for years also.
Sky is not the limit, but we are the limit. Like, you know,
Yes. In actuarial science, it is completely based on the person, how much he wants to go ahead. Literally, sky is the limit.
Yes. Makes sense. Any last words?
Sure. So I don't want to be very much actuarial specific because the entire, I think the last 1 hour, and I think Aayushi and Darshan kind of very much summarize the actuarial skill set and everything. So it's just, I think, some general takeaways, right? So I really feel that our generation kind of lacks patience, and I am saying our generation and assuming all of us are young, so please. Yeah. So when I say our generation, so let's say with the Instagram reel or something like that, you know, if there's a 10-second reel also, and after 3 seconds I feel it's boring, I'll just swipe it, right? So sometimes we might feel that, you know, it's not the right career for me, this, that, everything. There might be those off days also, but if you remember why you started, then it should be okay, and with the perseverance, consistency, it should be okay. And let's say after 4 papers, if you felt that, okay, this might not be for me, the idea should not be to just keep climbing the wrong mountain. Instead, stop there. Okay, explore more and everything, start something new, right? There should be both narratives. I'm not saying that, okay, you only have to do it, but the best person, Aayushi can't tell CA acha hai, Actuary acha hai. Only you can answer by yourself that what works for me, what are my goals, what are my priorities, and I have to pursue in that particular manner. Baki, I think being flexible, being open, and being patient is extremely important if we can focus on these things. And given I kind of I'm a big generative AI geek and all of that. So in this whole AI world, I think we don't just want to survive, but we want to thrive. And really, I think 3 skills. Everything else can be taken care of, right? The technical work, the studies and everything, because many things will be automated 10 years from now. But 3 skills I think which still will be relevant is, one is critical thinking, right? Because what prompt you give to ChatGPT also is only as good as your critical thinking and creativity. So critical thinking and creativity is extremely important. Communication is very important, right? Because prompting someone, or let's say me telling her a complex idea in a very simple manner, right? How better I'm able to communicate, it's very important. So critical thinking, communication, and the last is collaboration. Like how well you build relationships, and not only build but sustain them over time. Right, so that is also very important. These I call the 3 C's, which I tell in every lecture when I kind of end the lecture. So
extremely relevant. So just on that note, I think one of my friends, she was based in Kolkata, and for whatever reasons, she chose to drop out of actuarial science. What she ended up was with a certificate program from the European School of Pastry, and she started baking. And one thing that she told me, and because you mentioned that those skills will always help you, she told me that all her mathematics, all her ratio proportion that she had learned throughout helped her in kind of making those recipes also. So what you study will never go waste and will always be applicable some or the other way. And even if you choose to drop out, there are enough options available, right?
Yes.
Perfect, guys. So I think this has been good. Hopefully our viewers now have a much better understanding of what actuarial science is as a career. Thank you so much for taking out time. I know it wasn't the best experience waking up at 7 in the morning, especially on a weekend. But
I think actuaries are used to it. So usually we might reach the library at 9 o'clock, so it's okay. I think.
That's good. Thank you so much, guys. I think this has been fun. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.